Hi, this is Amy K. Watson, and I'm the CEO and head coach for Career Leadership Alignment. I'm here to talk to you about how to create trusting relationships. If you're interested in seeing a bibliography, just let me know. Building trusting relationships really is about staying focused on yourself first. And then it's going to be about recognizing what you can do to help other people have trusting relationships with each other. So, first off, looking at yourself, recognizing when things also can apply to you. This can be really hard to do. It takes a lot of courage and vulnerability to look at yourself and say that, okay, maybe I haven't always delivered. If I have not always delivered, what are the ways in which I could be more reliable? If you're struggling in a relationship with somebody and it just seems like there's a lack of trust there, you may have to ask yourself, what are some things that they may have relied on me for that I haven't followed through on? Or maybe are there some ways in which my words and my actions aren't coming across to them as aligned? Am I coming across as inconsistent? What can I do about that? It can be hard to look at yourself in that way, and yet it's so important if you're going to build that trusting relationship. This is one that I really struggle with, which is being kind of withholding about what's going on with you personally, about who you are. Now, I know it seems like I'm not like that because I'm constantly telling stories about myself. And when I'm teaching, I do have a tendency to err on the side of telling stories about my own experiences. However, when I'm in relationship with somebody, that's a different situation. And it can be difficult for me to be upfront about how I'm feeling. It can be difficult for me to say what I want to happen in that relationship, or to speak up when there's a boundary that I want them to honor that for some reason it doesn't seem like they are aware of. Those are the kinds of things that we have to be willing to lean outside of our comfort zone in order to be able to share more openly about who we are and what we're looking for in that relationship. Another place, or another way that we sometimes decrease the ability that others have to trust us is if we're trying a little bit too hard to impress them. And this can be another thing that I know that I do. And it's hard to not do this when, I'm in marketing, I'm in sales, I've got to promote myself, right? However, even though, yes, all of that's true, I have to lean outside of my comfort zone in order to be able to let people know, here are the results that people get when they work with me. At the same time, I can't start claiming that things happen that have not happened. I can't exaggerate. I can't claim that I can do something that I actually can't do, or claim that I have experience that I haven't actually had. Another way that we sometimes lose other people's trust is not meeting their expectations, not because we overpromised and underdelivered, but rather because we thought we could do it and it turned out we couldn't. And I know that, for instance, I had a client once who he was so excited to have an opportunity at work. It was a stretch assignment, and so he jumped at the chance, and it turned out to be something that involved a lot of spreadsheets, and he wasn't really familiar with how all of the different spreadsheets went together and what the logic was between different fields. And yet he was dedicated. He was determined he was going to figure it out. And so a project that probably should have taken a few days took him weeks, during which time People were waiting for the results of the work that he was doing, and his own credibility was slipping. Another way that others' ability to trust us can be undermined is if we're not willing to admit our mistakes. That can be really tricky. If you grew up in an environment where it wasn't safe to be wrong or to make a mistake, then we can grow up with, that little kid is still living inside of us and is still sounding the alarm saying, don't go there, don't let people know that you've made a mistake. But on the outside, we're grown up and we have to let people know. Another way that sometimes we lose people's trust is by, letting the cat out of the bag. And we do that sometimes really with a strong hope of building a relationship. But when you're building a relationship by sharing information that's not yours to share, then you're also losing a relationship at the same time. So that's very obvious, and yet in the moment it can feel like it's a more difficult decision than that. If somebody tells me something in confidence, I don't share it. Or if I find that I'm in a situation where, wow, if I could share this, it would make such a difference, then going back and asking. It might turn out that they'd be okay with it, but it may also turn out that it's not okay. So you've got to check back in. Another way that we sometimes lose other people's trust is when ethics are not very clear. And in that case, it's important to be aware of the places where our ethical decision making missed the mark and take corrective action, do what it takes to mend those fences, and then get clear. Having some guidelines, and you can actually do some study and learn what some good guidelines might be for how you can make more ethical decisions. So having some guidelines can help, but it also really helps just to have some people that you can talk with, people who you trust and admire, whose decisions you would like to emulate, and just kind of knock around some ideas. Let them know, hey, I ran into this situation, wasn't sure how to handle it. Here's what I did. Can we talk about it so that I could get some clarity about what was good about that, what wasn't so good about that, what I can do now, or here's something that's coming up. So just engaging in conversation with people and being willing to forgive yourself for having a learning curve there. Most of us have some kind of a learning curve there. Another way in which we can sometimes lose people's trust is by prioritizing our own self-interest. If you do your own searching moral inventory and you recognize that, I really have been prioritizing my self-interest over others, then the thing to do is to start practicing being aware of and concerned about others' needs, and keep an eye out. If there's somebody who's really been harmed by your self-interest, your selfishness, then going to them and owning the fact that you've had that approach and asking them, what can I do to help meet your needs? And what can I do to help repair what's broken between us? Another way that we can build trust, not necessarily between yourself and another person, but if, let's say, you're managing a team or you are a leader in an organization that has several teams, you might notice that there are teams that are in so much competition with each other that there's a real us versus them kind of attitude between them. And in that kind of situation, you can really have some influence and help to build trust between those different parts of the organization just by helping them to understand what it is that's happened between them. I mean, there may really be some like bad blood between them that goes back to a real incident, or there could be some either real or perceived inequity between the groups. If that's the case, then there are some real barriers that need to be removed before these groups are going to be able to collaborate effectively and get results together. So you can be about removing those barriers, identifying what's the problem, fixing those problems, but then also just find ways for them to connect, find ways for them to build those relationships with each other, just to get to know each other, to recognize that they do have areas of overlap, that they do care about a lot of the same things, and to really build that sense of a coalition between them. You can be a part of that. You may also sense that within the team that you are managing, trust is starting to erode. There can be different signs and signals that folks are beginning to distrust each other. If that starts to happen, then you as a leader have a responsibility to really meet that head on, recognize what's going on, and start asking questions. Where did this come from? What do you need? What is it that you're concerned about? And start identifying and removing those barriers as much as you can. And then finally, one way that you can build trust is be willing to just bring your heart to work. Start sharing your genuine concern for other people's needs. And that can go a long way to building trust, both between yourself and other individuals, and just creating a more trusting environment. All right, thanks so much for tuning in. If you recognized any of those barrier habits within yourself, things that might be coming up that are eroding other people's ability to trust you, then I'd like to invite you to consider joining me for the next self-leadership workshop. It's all about mastering the motives within. And when you look at what's going on inside you that is feeding those barrier habits, there are some real things that you can do in order to shift those habits. Even if it's been on your radar for a long time, you've tried to change it, you haven't been able to change it, there are some things that we can do to help you to get some new results. So if you're noticing those barrier habits, consider joining me for the workshop. Otherwise, I hope you will be joining me for Lunch and Learns every month. And you can go to careerleadershipalignment.com, look for the Performance Skills series there, and I hope to connect with you soon. All right, bye-bye.